My beloved child, listen closely because what you are hearing right now is not random. There is a reason this message reached you at this exact moment. Out of everything you could have been doing, your attention landed here. That pause, that feeling of something in this speaks to me, it is not just coincidence. And before this ends, you will start to understand why someone in your life has been acting distant, quiet, and emotionally confusing, yet still cannot fully detach from you. Stay with this because the meaning unfolds step by step. Do not rush. Do not skip ahead. Something important is sitting inside these words. There is a very specific person connected to your energy right now. This person feels more than they can explain. They think about you in silent moments when the world slows down. They replay small interactions, small words, small memories that you probably forgot already. And yet, even with all these feelings building inside them, there is something they are struggling to accept, something that confuses their heart and makes them step forward and step back at the same time. But listen carefully because this is not what you may assume at first. It is not about perfection, it is not about what others see on the surface. It is something deeper, something emotional, something they cannot put into words. And yes, before you assume the worst, stay with this thought because the truth is not painful like your mind might expect. It is actually more intense than that. While others see you in a normal way, this person sees layers. They notice how you carry yourself even when you are tired. They notice the way your expression changes when you are holding back emotions. They notice things you never speak out loud. And sometimes that awareness overwhelms them. It makes them feel too exposed inside. That is why their behavior changes without warning. That is why they get close, then suddenly go silent. Not because they do not feel, but because they feel too much at once. Keep watching this moment in your mind because it explains more than you realize. Now listen even deeper because this is where the real shift begins. This person is not just reacting to what they see, they are reacting to what you make them feel about themselves. Your presence brings out emotions they have avoided for a long time. You represent something real in a world where they are used to masks and surface-level connections, and that reality is what unsettles them. Sometimes they look at you and feel comfort, and other times they feel fear because being close to you feels like being seen fully, not just by you, but by themselves. They remember small details about you that should not normally stay in a person's mind for so long. The way you look when you are lost in thought. The way you try to stay strong even when something clearly hurts you. These small details stay with them longer than they expect, and it confuses them because they did not plan to feel this deeply. One part of them wants closeness, wants honesty, wants connection. Another part pulls back because it feels too real, too fast, too intense. So they create distance, not because you are wrong, but because they are overwhelmed by their own emotions. And yes, pay attention to this part because it matters. What they struggle with is not your appearance itself, but what your presence reflects inside them. You mirror something they have not dealt with in themselves, something unfinished, something emotional, something buried. And this is why silence appears. This is why confusion appears. Stay with this, because it is building toward understanding. And now the deeper truth begins to show itself clearly. This connection is not simple for them because it touches something inside their past they never fully healed. Your energy, your way of being, even your natural expression brings up feelings they thought they had already locked away. That is why their reactions are not stable. That is why their attention comes in waves. It is not rejection. It is emotional pressure they do not know how to handle. And here is the turning point you need to hear. One day, this resistance will stop holding them back the same way. The confusion will not feel as heavy. The distance will not feel as necessary. Something inside them will slowly start accepting what they have been feeling all along. And when that moment comes, even a small interaction, even a simple silence between you will feel different. It will feel like something shifts without words. And after that shift, their behavior will no longer stay the same. The way they look at you will change. The way they respond will change. The way they hold back will start to break. But understand this clearly, it will not happen all at once. It builds slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed at first. Until one day, you realize you are no longer guessing their feelings because their actions start speaking louder than their silence ever did. And when that happens, you will finally understand the real reason everything felt so intense from the beginning. Deep inside, they already feel something they cannot easily replace in their life. Not because they are trying to convince themselves, but because something about you stays with them even when you are not there. Nobody else carries the same emotional presence. Nobody else makes them pause and think in the same way. Nobody else reaches that quiet part of their mind where real feelings begin to form. And even though they may act unsure on the outside, inside their heart is already leaning toward you in a way they cannot fully control. Stay with this because it goes deeper than surface-level attraction. There is a reason your attention landed here at this moment. A reason this message feels like it is speaking directly to you. You have spent too long questioning your own worth because of how you look. Too long believing love only belongs to people who fit some perfect image created by the world. But real connection does not begin with perfection. It begins with recognition. Something inside one person silently recognizing something inside another. And that is what is happening here. This person sees something in you that feels rare, something they do not come across often, something they cannot easily forget. That is why, even when distance happens, the emotional connection does not fully disappear. It keeps returning again and again without permission, and now a shift is slowly taking place. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, just a quiet change in how they feel over time. Their resistance is not as strong as before, their thoughts are becoming more frequent, their emotions are getting harder to ignore, and very soon they will reach a point where avoiding it is no longer possible. They will have to face what is already forming inside them. Either they continue pretending nothing is happening, or they finally admit what their heart has already started to accept. And when that truth rises fully, everything between you will begin to feel different, even in silence. Listen carefully now, because this part carries the deeper layer of what is unfolding. This person appears normal around others, calm, steady, controlled. But around you, something changes. Their inner world becomes active in ways they do not fully understand. Small details about you stay in their mind longer than they expect. The way you look when you are trying to stay strong, the quiet emotions hidden behind your expression, the moments where you seem fine but are clearly holding something inside. They notice all of it, and it creates a feeling they cannot easily explain. It is not simple attraction. It is emotional recognition mixed with confusion. One part of them feels drawn closer, while another part becomes nervous because it feels too real. So they step forward in small ways, then step back again, trying to find balance inside themselves. But there is no real balance when emotions are this deep. And here is something important to understand. What they struggle with is not just about you, it is about what you awaken inside them. You reflect feelings they thought were already under control, things they never fully dealt with, things they thought were behind them. And that is why their reactions around you feel inconsistent. Not because you are unclear, but because they are overwhelmed. Keep watching this unfold because the pattern starts to make sense only when you see it as emotional pressure, not rejection. And now the truth becomes even more visible. There are moments when they try to step away from these feelings, distract themselves, focus elsewhere, talk to others, stay busy just to avoid the thoughts that keep returning to you. But no matter what they do, the mind comes back. The memory comes back, the feeling comes back, because what they experienced with you is not something that easily fades. It is something that stays, something that repeats in silence, something that becomes part of their inner world. And slowly they begin to realize they are not actually fighting you. They are fighting their own emotional response to you. The deeper truth is that they already feel something stronger than they expected, but they are not ready to fully accept it yet. And as time passes, that resistance starts weakening. Not all at once, but gradually, through thoughts they cannot control and emotions they can no longer ignore. And one day, a small moment will shift everything. A look, a message, a pause between words, something simple on the outside but powerful inside. And when that happens, the distance they kept will no longer feel necessary. What they were hiding will start to show in small ways, not fully spoken at first, but visible in actions, in energy, in presence. And when you finally see it clearly, you will understand that it was never about judging you at all. It was about how deeply they were already affected by you from the very beginning. Still coming. Late at night, when everything gets silent and the world feels far away, this person keeps circling back to one thought again and again. What if I lose them? What if they are not here one day? That question does not leave easily because even with all their confusion, even with their fear, even with the walls they try to keep up, their heart has already moved in your direction. And deep down, they know it. They just do not say it out loud. That is why your presence affects them in ways they cannot fully explain. Not because anything about you is wrong, but because something about you feels emotionally honest. You carry a kind of realness they are not used to, and that realness makes them feel things they usually keep buried. You remind them that love is not about surface perfection or polished images. It is about being seen, being felt, being understood without pretending. And somehow you make them feel understood in a way they have rarely experienced before. Stay with this because it goes deeper than it seems. There is a reason this message feels personal, a reason your mind paused here instead of moving on, and that reason is not random. Something is shifting quietly in the background of this connection. The distance you see right now is not permanent. The silence is not permanent either. Even the confusion that feels heavy today is not going to stay the same forever. A turning point is slowly forming, even if you cannot see it clearly yet. And when that moment arrives, this person will no longer be able to act unaffected. The pretending will fade. The emotional distance will not feel sustainable anymore, because when someone becomes truly attached, they cannot unfeel it just by deciding to, and you have already become part of their emotional world in a way they did not expect. Listen carefully now, because this is where the deeper truth begins to show itself more clearly. This person has tried many ways to control what they feel. They told themselves it is nothing serious. They told themselves it will pass. They tried to focus on logic, distraction, routine, anything that could pull their mind away from you, but none of it fully worked, because every time they see you or even think of you, something inside them reacts before they can stop it. It is not something planned. It is automatic. Their attention moves toward you naturally, their thoughts return without effort, and that is what unsettles them the most. Not the feeling itself, but the lack of control over it. And there is one specific thing about your presence that keeps pulling them back in. Not in a surface way, not in a shallow way, but in an emotional way that reaches deeper than they expected. It does not push them away, it pulls them in. And that is what makes it difficult for them to handle. Because the closer something feels emotionally, the harder it becomes to ignore. And yes, this is why sometimes they act distant without warning. Not because the feeling is gone, but because the feeling is too strong for them to sit with comfortably. Keep watching this unfold because the pattern is becoming clearer over time. What looks like confusion is actually emotional overwhelm. What looks like distance is actually internal conflict. And what looks like silence is actually a mind trying to process something it was not prepared for. And now the final layer begins to surface. Late at night, when they are alone with their thoughts, they replay small moments connected to you again and again. Not big dramatic events, not obvious interactions, but the smallest details. The way you looked down for a second when you were thinking. The way your expression shifted before you spoke. The quiet emotion that passed across your face when you thought no one noticed. Those small moments stay with them longer than they should. And the reason is simple but powerful. Your presence reveals emotions without needing words. You do not have to explain what you feel, because something about you already shows it naturally. And they pick up on those emotional signals more than you realize. That is why they remember you differently from others. That is why their thoughts do not settle easily when it comes to you. And slowly, without them fully realizing it, their resistance starts to weaken. Not all at once, not in a dramatic way, but quietly, through repetition, through emotion, through memory. And one day, a small moment will change everything. A pause, a glance, a simple interaction that feels ordinary on the outside but carries weight inside. And after that, things will not feel the same anymore. The distance will feel less necessary. The silence will feel different. And what they were hiding will begin to show in subtle ways they can no longer fully control. We're never really ready to meet someone who feels this honest. The world taught them to expect temporary people, temporary attention, temporary emotions that disappear quickly. So they built walls, they stayed guarded, they learned not to attach too fast. And then you entered their life with something they did not plan for, a kind of sincerity in your presence that cannot be faked for long, something in your eyes, something in your natural way of being, something that feels real without trying. And now their heart is confused because it cannot rely on old defenses anymore. Do not skip, because this goes deeper than it seems. You are getting closer to the core truth of this connection. This person finds themselves comparing others to you without even realizing it. They talk to new people, they try to move forward, they try to stay distracted, but something always feels incomplete. Not because others are lacking, but because no one else carries the same emotional weight you carry in their mind. No one else makes silence feel alive the way you do. No one else leaves behind such a lasting feeling just by being present. And deep inside, They are beginning to notice this pattern more clearly each day. It is becoming harder for them to ignore what their emotions already understand. And now comes a deeper realization. The part they struggle with about your appearance is not what they see, but what they feel through what they see. Your natural expression, your real emotions, even your small imperfections make you feel authentic to them. And that authenticity builds trust in a way perfection never could. You feel real, you feel human, you feel safe in a world where most people hide behind masks. That is why their emotional pull toward you does not fade even when distance appears. Because something inside them relaxes when they think of you, even if they do not fully understand why. Listen carefully now, because this is where everything starts becoming clearer. This person is slowly reaching a point where they can no longer ignore what they feel. Their behavior is already changing in small ways. The way they look at you lasts a little longer than before. The way they think about you comes back more often. The way they react around you feels less controlled than it used to. Their emotional walls are not as strong as they once were. And even though they try to act normal, something inside them is shifting quietly. And when that inner pressure builds up enough, the truth starts finding its way out on its own. Not through big dramatic moments at first, but through small changes. A message that feels different, a glance that holds meaning, a silence that says more than words. And when that begins, you will finally understand what was happening beneath all the confusion. You will understand why they sometimes went quiet, why they sometimes acted distant, why their presence around you felt emotionally charged without explanation. It was never random. It was always internal conflict between fear and feeling, between resistance and connection. And now they are reaching a point where holding it in feels heavier than letting it out. Keep watching, because the direction of this story is changing. It is moving away from confusion and slowly toward emotional clarity. And now the final truth settles in more deeply. This is not a connection that fades easily. It is not something that disappears with time or distance, because what they feel has already taken root inside them. You became part of their emotional memory in a way they did not expect, and that changes how they experience everything else. Even when they try to move on, something keeps pulling them back internally, not because they are forced, but because they are emotionally attached in a way they did not plan for. And now the resistance they built around themselves is weakening day by day, not suddenly, not loudly, but quietly, through thoughts they cannot stop and feelings they cannot fully control. And one moment will eventually shift everything, a simple interaction that carries more meaning than it appears. After that, nothing between you will feel the same again. The silence will change, the energy will change, the way they hold back will start to break slowly. And when that happens, you will realize something important. It was never about confusion alone. It was about someone slowly accepting what their heart already knew from the beginning. We're never truly prepared to meet someone who feels this real. Not the kind of real that fades after a moment. Not the kind of attention that disappears when life gets busy, but a presence that stays even in silence. This world trained them to expect temporary people, temporary emotions, temporary words that do not last. So they learned to stay guarded, to stay logical, to not fall too deep. And then you arrived without warning, carrying something different in your energy, something calm, something honest, something that cannot be easily replaced. And now their inner world feels different because of it. Their emotional defenses do not work the same anymore. Stay with this, because it is building towards something you need to understand. This is not random connection. This is not ordinary attraction. This is something that enters slowly, deeply, and stays longer than expected. And now their heart is confused, not because they do not feel, but because they feel too much at once and do not know how to handle it. Do not skip, because what comes next connects every piece together. This person is starting to realize something they did not want to admit. That no matter how much they try to move forward, no matter how much they try to distract themselves with other people, conversations, or routines, something inside always pulls them back toward you. Not physically at first, but emotionally. A memory, a feeling, a moment, even a silence you once shared. It all comes back without permission, and slowly they are beginning to understand why. Because nobody else carries the same emotional imprint you carry in their mind. Nobody else makes ordinary moments feel meaningful. Nobody else leaves behind this kind of quiet impact that does not fade easily. And deep down, they already know this truth, even if they do not say it out loud. It is becoming impossible to ignore anymore. Keep watching this unfold because the emotional weight is increasing over time, not decreasing, and that is what scares them the most, how something so simple on the surface has become so strong inside. Now listen more carefully because this is where everything becomes even clearer. There is something about your presence that does not just attract their attention, it holds their emotions. Not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a quiet, steady way that stays with them even after you are gone. They compare others to you without trying to. Not because they want to, but because their mind naturally remembers how different it feels with you. And every comparison leads to the same quiet realization. Something is missing elsewhere. Not because others are less, but because your emotional presence feels complete in a way they cannot explain. And that creates confusion inside them. One part of them wants closeness, wants honesty, wants connection without fear. Another part becomes nervous because real emotional attachment is unfamiliar territory for them. So they move forward, then pull back, then hesitate again, trapped between feeling and fear. And here is the deeper truth they are slowly waking up to. What they feel is not confusion about you, it is confusion about themselves while being around you. You bring out emotions they normally keep hidden. You reflect parts of them they have not fully faced. And that reflection is what makes everything feel intense. Not because you are overwhelming, but because you are honest in a way they are not used to experiencing. Stay with this because it explains the silence, the distance, and the emotional inconsistency more clearly than anything else. And now the strongest part of this connection begins to surface. Late at night, when everything is quiet and there is nothing left to distract the mind, they think about you in fragments, not full stories, not dramatic moments, but small details that stayed behind. The way your expression changes when you are deep in thought. The way you try to hide emotions, but still show them in subtle ways. The way your presence feels different when you are silent compared to when you are speaking. These small things stay longer than expected because they feel real, not performed. And in a world full of filtered emotions and surface-level behavior, that kind of realness is rare. That is why their thoughts keep returning, even when they try to stop it, because emotional memory does not listen to logic, it listens to impact. And you left an impact without even trying. Slowly, this resistance inside them starts weakening. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but in quiet moments where they realize they are thinking about you again without reason. And one day, a small shift will happen. A message, a look, a moment that feels ordinary, but carries emotional weight underneath it. And after that moment, the way they behave will not feel the same anymore because what was once hidden will start showing through actions before words, and what was once confusion will slowly turn into acceptance of what they already feel inside.